If you spend any time at all on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I for one spend an unhealthy amount of time on there, it's impossible not to notice all the neo-Nazis, the anti-Semitic accounts, the racist tweets, particularly since Elon Musk bought the company almost a year ago. For the record, I still say Twitter and I still say tweets. Now, the proliferation, of hate speech on the platform is obvious to anyone who uses it. Anyone except, it seems, for Elon Musk. Back in April, a BBC reporter tried to ask Musk about the hate on his site, but he didn't come prepared and he didn't have any receipts.
What hate speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
but just a personal anecdote, like what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content.
Can you name one example?
I honestly don't need. Honestly, I don't.
You can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why, because I don't actually use that For You feed anymore.
I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet, and yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's a false.
No, what I claimed...
You just lied.
Embarrassing, really, not because Musk was right, but because it is staggeringly easy to provide far more than a single example of hateful content. And yet even today, on Twitter Spaces, Elon Musk cited that BBC interview as proof that hate speech isn't a problem on his platform because no one can provide him with a single example. So, Elon, challenge accepted. But first, the big picture and the numbers. The ADL Center for Tech and Society pulled 500,000 tweets mentioning Jew or Judaism from the 2 weeks before and after Musk's takeover last year. After analyzing those posts, they found a 60% increase in the number of anti-Semitic posts in the 2 weeks after Musk bought the site. Musk has since threatened to sue the ADL for defamation. Soon after the ADL sounded the alarm, the Center for Countering Digital Hate, the CCDH, a non-profit that tracks hate speech, reported a 202% increase in the amount of tweets mentioning the N-word. 202%. Musk's company is currently suing the CCDH, claiming that they misused Twitter data to conduct a, quote, scare campaign to drive away advertisers. They're suing them. Notice a trend yet? And it hasn't gotten better. At the end of August, the CCDH flagged 300 tweets for removal because they contained hateful content. But a week later, 86% of those tweets were still there. They were not taken down. And remember the ridiculous Twitter Blue subscriber service? The CCDH looked at hate-filled tweets from 100 Twitter Blue subscribers and found that 99% of those tweets were still up 4 days after being reported. The CCDH wrote that this suggests that the platform is allowing Twitter Blue subscribers to break its rules with impunity and is even algorithmically boosting their toxic tweets. Got that? Algorithmically boosting toxic tweets of Twitter Blue users. Under Musk's ownership, this isn't just toxic for the rest of us non-bigoted users of the platform, but also toxic for the businesses that advertise on there. Just a few weeks ago, the CCDH reported that there have been dozens of ads appearing right next to hateful tweets, despite new CEO Linda Yaccarino's apparent commitment to brand safety. But let's return to Musk's original challenge. Just one single example of a hateful tweet that's been posted since his takeover. Just one he wants. I'll do you one better, Elon. I can give you endless examples. And a warning, the tweets I'm about to read to you are pretty disgusting, and I'm only putting them on air because a dishonest Musk wants you to believe they don't exist. Let's start on November 22nd, 2022. Far-right commentator James Lindsay tweets, "Groomer eyes," in reference to a picture of a transgender woman. February 27th, an account replied to a tweet about imprisoning undocumented migrants, quote, "could always shoot them." March 8th, someone tweets, "Blacks have found a new get-rich-quick scheme to try to get arrested, then get the cop to do something to you, then say you were harassed and discriminated against." March 17th, an account tweets at actor George Takei, writing, "You're nothing but an old gay groomer of children at this point." Then there's this tweet from March 23rd. "Why is it anti-Semitic to tell the truth? Soros is a Hungarian-American Jew and a thug hellbent on destroying America. Synagogue of Satan." Or this one from March 27th. It's a photo of a white family with the caption, "What America should look like, all white." And those are just some of the tweets we saw before that BBC interview was done and which are still up today as of Thursday morning. The hate on that website seems to get worse week after week, month after month. Since his April 12th interview with the BBC, for example, on April 28th, diversity is a code word for white genocide. May 3rd, black culture has done more damage than the Klan ever did. This one came on July 25th, quote, "There's nothing more disgusting than an attractive white girl with a black boyfriend." And from that same account, a few weeks later, "We should be cancelling people for not being racist anti-Semites." On August the 14th, a screenshot of a post saying white supremacy isn't a problem, it's a solution, with another user replying, "It's a reasonable conclusion." August 17th, there's hardly even anything to notice about Semites besides how they're trying to destroy us. August 18th, a reply posting this meme reading, just admit it, white America was better. September 25th, white men are repulsed by women with mixed race offspring. It shows a lack of loyalty to her race. Racist, transphobic, anti-Semitic, hate-filled, and unfortunately not even close to the worst of what my team saw when researching this segment. And look, I'm sorry you had to hear all that, but please don't blame me or my team. Blame Elon Musk. Remember, these tweets are still on Twitter, are still published and untouched, even after several of them were reported to Twitter, to X, by the CCDH. And that first tweet by James Lindsay that was loaded with transphobia, well, that tweet might not have happened if it weren't for Musk's company reinstating his previously banned account. Other reinstated accounts on Musk's watch include indicted sex trafficker Andrew Tate, misogynistic and anti-trans commentator Jordan Peterson, neo-Nazi Andrew Anglin, and white nationalist Nick Fuentes, who quickly had to be resuspended within just one day of coming back onto Twitter after declaring his, quote, love for Hitler on Twitter Spaces. Because remember, Twitter does not take anti-Semitism lightly. I mean, isn't that why they let Kanye West, now known as Ye, back onto the site after getting suspended for his swastika post? But even if horrible, hate-filled people are saying horrible, hate-filled things on Twitter, that's not Musk's fault, is it? It's not as if he's amplifying those horrible, hate-filled posts, right? Sorry to disappoint you, but Twitter's owner and the site's most followed and influential user just loves to reply to and thereby amplify and spread some of the worst tweets on his site. Here's Musk replying, he's right, to a tweet showing an imam saying France will become an Islamic country through jihad. Here he is boosting a tweet from noted Islamophobe Robert Spencer, a man so extreme he was banned from entering the UK, about a Muslim migrant on welfare who stabbed a young girl and her grandmother. Funny, you don't see Musk doing that whenever a white guy commits a crime. But it's not just casual Islamophobia. Here's a tweet that demonizes all gender-affirming care as sterilizing and mutilating children. Musk felt the need to tack on the response, those who support it should be in prison for life. And then there was this meme from the account End Wokeness saying perspective is everything, while showing the media's focus on white-on-black crime instead of the much higher black-on-white crime. It's a classic racist dog whistle that Musk himself entertained, responding, odd, why would the media misrepresent the real situation to such an extreme degree? That chart on crime, by the way, was fact-checked in 2020, was shown to have used cherry-picked data. Musk also responds to openly racist tweets, replying, interesting, to the one that reads, blacks kill each other, whites kill themselves. Yeah, interesting. Then there is replies to anti-Semitic tweets like this one, where his reply boosts the claim that Jews, quote-unquote, support censorship. Of course, the tweet distorts a Knight Foundation poll about students that doesn't say that at all. And the same thing can be seen in a now deleted reply to a tweet boosting a bizarre and offensive anti-Semitic conspiracy theory about Mel Gibson's physique. It's truly awful, the kind of garbage that Musk engages with on Twitter. I mean, how does he even find all of these conspiracy accounts to begin with? How does he find these bigoted tweets to reply to? The mind boggles. But those replies are incredibly powerful. His one-word replies, interesting and concerning, spread these kinds of hateful falsehoods to more than 150 million followers, more reach than probably any other user on the platform. Still, you might say, he's a reply guy. He likes to engage, but it's not as if he's producing hate-filled or bigoted tweets, right? Right? Unfortunately, wrong. When the BBC reporter was asked by Musk to produce examples of hateful content on Twitter, he could have just pointed to Musk's own account. In the wake of the violent attack against former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband Paul last October, for example, the newly minted owner of Twitter, in a now deleted tweet, pushed a ridiculous homophobic conspiracy theory from a fake news site. In May, he also tweeted out an image with the quote, to learn who rules over you, simply find out who you're not allowed to criticize, attributed to the philosopher Voltaire, except those words aren't Voltaire's. No, in fact, they're from the mouth of an infamous neo-Nazi. And yet that Musk tweet is still up, despite dozens of people pointing that out to him. And then there's also this glaringly anti-Semitic one. The Soros organization appears to want nothing less than the destruction of Western civilization. He even compared Jewish billionaire George Soros to the famous Jewish X-Men villain Magneto, as you do. Then there are other tweets of his like gender-affirming care for minors is pure evil. And Musk calling the media racist against whites and Asians, which I'm sure had the folks on 4chan cheering out loud. In fact, Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes literally praised Musk's campaign against the ADL, which was filled with anti-Semitic tropes, saying, we have a captive audience of one who just happens to be the richest man in the world. What an endorsement. Anyone else might hang their head in shame after getting that endorsement, but not Musk. No, he doesn't care about the actual answer to that question he put to the BBC reporter back in April. He doesn't care about the well-documented and undeniable Islamophobia, transphobia, homophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-black racism, misogyny that is running rampant on his site, one of the most influential websites on planet Earth. In fact, as the co-author of one recent academic study of Twitter's hateful content put it, Musk has winked at those sentiments often enough that a population of active or potential Twitter users who shared those views recognized the opportunity they were being given. I think that's actually an understatement. Hiding behind a convenient mantra of free speech, Musk isn't just winking at the bigots. He's cheering them on, platforming them, encouraging them, amplifying them, using a global social media site he bought because he said he wanted to help humanity to bring out the worst in humanity. And we will all be living with the toxic, dangerous, perhaps violent consequences of this for years to come.